This afternoon, I have with me the acting commanding officer of the Bermuda Regiment and the Commissioner of Police doing this press briefing. As a further measure of public safety, the Governor, in consultation with the Premier, the Honourable David Burke, JP, has exercised his authority under the Emergency Powers Act 1963. This has allowed for the enactment of the Summary Offences Curfew Order 2020, where the public is required to be off the roads or highways during certain hours of darkness. As the Premier announced yesterday, the curfew order takes effect tomorrow, Sunday, the 29th of March 2020, from 8 p.m. until 6 a.m. for the next 3 days in the first instance. For the avoidance of doubt, a highway is defined as any public road, street, lane, alley, wharf, or any public place in Bermuda. The curfew will be imposed for 3 days, and then we will review these matters and as the situation requires. However, again, we are stressing that during non-curfew hours, people are encouraged to stay home except to purchase essentials or for medical emergencies. An operational plan has been prepared by the Commissioner of Police to carry out the objectives of the Summary Offences Curfew Order 2020. Officers from departments across the Bermuda Police Service will be deployed in conjunction with the Royal Bermuda Regiment personnel. There will be a combination of static roadside community advisory points at key junctions across the island with roving patrols. Drivers and persons using the highways will be stopped and advised to return immediately to their homes. Persons who have written permission of the Bermuda police officer of the rank of Chief Inspector or above will be allowed to proceed. Persons who fall into the professional categories listed in the order will be allowed to proceed. Any person found to be contravening the curfew will be arrested and on conviction will be fined $2,880 or imprisoned for 6 months or both a fine and imprisonment. Emergency and uniformed services on duty are exempt from the curfew, which means police officers, reserve police officers, Bermuda Fire and Rescue officers, the Royal Bermuda Regiment, the Department of Customs, the Department of Immigration and Correction officers. Other exemptions are as follows and include individuals who provide a critical service for Bermuda: the Premier, Ministers of the Cabinet, the Cabinet Secretary, the Head of the Public Service and Permanent Secretaries, the Deputy Governor and Government House staff, judges in the Supreme Court, judges in the Magistrates Court, court associates, U.S. Consul General and staff, and all honorary consul. Any registered medical practitioner, registered nurses, ambulance drivers and crew, or any medical practitioner employed with the BHB and licensed security officers, stevedoring services and dock workers, the Department of Child and Family Services staff of Belco, Digicel, One Communications, and members of the press. Persons with exemptions who are in public must have a valid copy of their driving license or valid employment ID. Those persons listed in the above-mentioned exemptions who perform a critical service of Bermuda will be required to submit a request to the Bermuda Police Service, who will vet and approve or deny the request. In other words, if you did not hear your company name and you perform a critical service to the people of Bermuda, we are giving you the opportunity to submit an online form. That form will be vetted by a police officer at the rank of a chief inspector. That online address is forms.gov.bm/COVID-19/curfew. That again is forms.gov.bm/COVID-19/curfew. In case of emergency, please email rcardwell@bps.bm. rcardwell@bps.bm. As the public can appreciate, these measures are being taken to reduce the movement of people around our island so that we have the best possible opportunity to reduce the risk of community transmission of the virus. I will now provide an update as where we are as it relates to the Bermuda Police Service and the Royal Bermuda Regiment's community advisory points and the community advisory home visits. The legislation that supports both of these actions can be found within the Bermuda Health Act 1949 and in addition to the Public Health COVID-19 Regulations 2020. The Public Health Act 1949, Section 10, provides the police the ability to aid and assist generally in carrying out the provisions and objects of this act. If there is any contravention of this act or any regulations, orders, or direction made in pursuance thereof, and it becomes known to any police officer, he shall forthwith report that contravention or failure to a public health officer. A notice or direction was issued by the Chief Medical Officer pursuant to Section 69 of the Public Health Act and the Public Health COVID-19 Regulations 2020. It was made clear that each person arriving in Bermuda on any flights listed in the notice shall be subject to a public health supervision for 14 days from the date of arrival in Bermuda as directed by a public health officer. Furthermore, each person in this order applies shall be under the supervision of a public health officer. They must separate himself from others at his home or accommodation in such a manner that shall be required under the Ministry of Health COVID-19 guidelines, remaining at his home or accommodation at all times except to seek urgent medical care. They must comply with self-monitoring and the reporting requirements of the public health officer, and immediately returning to his home or accommodation when ordered to do so by a health officer or a police officer. Additionally, Section 18 of the Public Health COVID-19 Regulations 2020, it allows for a health officer or police officer to advise those persons who are not in compliance with the regulations to return to a place of public health supervision. As a result of the community advisory points that were put in place throughout the island, commencing Monday, the 23rd of March 2020, the numbers of community advisory points are as follows. On Monday, there were 90 stops made by members of the Bermuda Police Service and the Royal Bermuda Regiment. On Tuesday, there were 1,106 stops. On Wednesday, there were 925. On Thursday, there were 291. On Friday, there were 376. Today, Saturday the 28th, as of this press conference, there were 138. You can see as people become familiar with our advisory points, the numbers are declining. The total number of community advisory points, the people that were stopped, was 2,926. None of the community checkpoints identified any persons who were under quarantine. On Thursday, the 26th of March 2020, the Bermuda Police Service commenced home visits. The numbers are as follows. On Thursday, 16 visits were completed. 2 persons were not at home. On Friday, 70 visits were completed. 3 persons were not at home. Today, at the time of this press briefing, there were 54 home visits and 4 people were not at home. The total persons identified as non-compliant to self-quarantine is 9 persons. Additionally, there were 25 persons who could not self-quarantine that are presently being housed at a facility being provided by the Bermuda government. All of the above mentioned information has been communicated to the Minister and the Ministry of Health. Lastly, I would like to provide an update on a few other important developments that we wanted to share with the community. With reference to our vulnerable people, we have received considerable feedback regarding the safeguarding of Bermuda's vulnerable persons. Whilst I can advise that the health and well-being of all our residents is of paramount importance to the government, we are working with helping agencies and partners to provide as much support as we can. I can advise that the Salvation Army, Focus, Christchurch, the Cathedral of the Most Holy Trinity Anglican Church, First Baptist Church, the Eliza Doolittle Society, Meals on Wheels, have offered to provide critical service of food distribution and feeding, and in some instances, shelter, shower facilities, and housing services. We will share the specific times and locations following these press briefings as we continue to receive updates of support and help from a variety of community agencies. Specifically, as it relates to the Salvation Army, they are providing services for our homeless population at Harbour Light. The Bermuda government, in conjunction with the Barclay Institute, the Royal Bermuda Regiment, and a number of other community stakeholders, will be housing our homeless population at the Barclay Institute Gymnasium. Additionally, Focus Housing has 4 beds available for those who need assistance with reference to domestic violence. These organizations will begin accepting individuals as of 7 p.m. tomorrow evening. Also, as a special request, the Salvation Army are looking for food service for the evening feeding program at the Citadel located at number 10 North Street. If any trained food server who is interested in volunteering their time, please call 296-6740 or 704-7673. Bermuda Hospitals Board Temporary Transportation. Tomorrow, the Department of Public Transportation, or DPT, will commence its daily service for the Bermuda Hospitals Board employees commuting to and from the King Edward VII Memorial Hospital. As a reminder, this temporary schedule was created to support our BHP health workers and will service routes 1, 3, 6, 7, 8, and 11, and will operate until the public bus service resumes its normal operations. The King Edward Memorial bus service will be limited to employees displaying a BHB ID only. Bermuda, as you have heard our government say repeatedly in the last few weeks, this is a matter that should not be taken lightly. We are singularly focused on preserving the health and safety of all residents. We will continue to take the necessary steps to protect the people of our beloved country. We are urging everyone to cooperate and do their best to ensure that we limit the spread of this deadly COVID-19 virus. We will now open up the floor for questions.
Royal Gazette can start with some questions.
Good afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon, sir.
A couple of things I just wanted to go over, maybe from your prepared notes to start. Just for clarification, you mentioned roads and highways, but the curfew order that takes effect tomorrow at 8 p.m. After 8 p.m., if you're out in a public park, if you're walking your dog,
everyone who was not listed in those critical service should be at home.
Yep. Appreciate that. Any grace period for people found out after 8 p.m. tomorrow, or is it?
We are giving enough notice to everyone that everyone should be in their home by 8 p.m. tomorrow evening.
Appreciate that. Sorry, bear with me just 1 second. You mentioned that the home checks had started on Thursday. A total of 9 people had been found to not be at home over Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. What happened to those 9 people?
They were not at home. I would allow the commissioner to deal with that question.
Well, the process is that those 9 are notified to the Ministry for Health, who in turn will liaise with a JP to look at whether or not powers under the Act are appropriate. Obviously, there will be engagement for those 9 individuals to ascertain why they were not there, but it will go then through into a judicial process because the law is quite clear. On the other side, in regards to the Summary Offences Act, police will stop, and if people are outside the curfew hour, then we will obviously take into account the circumstances, check their identification, see if they fall into the exemption list, but if they do not, the first instance is likely, particularly if they're close to home, we will direct them home, but we will take their name and addresses, and we will pass that information on to the Director of Public Prosecutions, who may then consider further enforcement action against them. The key thing that we want to get across here is that we're not seeking to criminalise people, but there is a line in the sand. The curfew has been set to provide additional support to prevent community transfer. So we're asking the public, and we're giving clear and early directions to how we wish them to behave. And the officers will be professional and courteous as seen within the community advisory points, but if people choose to breach, they're liable to fine, they're liable to arrest, and indeed they're liable to imprisonment. So we need our communities to work with us. And on reflecting what the Minister has said with the community advisory points, the fact that we were over 1,000 at the beginning of the week and we were down to 200 by the end of the week does show that messages are getting across and people's behaviour is changing in support of what Bermuda needs to do.
Appreciate that. Maybe while I have you on, some information came in earlier in the day about police presence at some of the golf courses in the East End. I'm wondering if you or perhaps
no, I can cover that. I was aware of it. We had some information in, which was anonymous, saying that Mid-Ocean Golf Club was fully open. Which was the bar, the clubhouse, and so on. Mm-hmm. And also the information suggested that persons that should have been in self-isolation or quarantine were playing golf. Mm-hmm. So we sent police resources there. The Minister actually engaged with the Vice Chairman, who confirmed the club was closed, but members had been permitted using their own clubs to be on the golf course. So we went there, we engaged with people, we checked that there was actually no parties that were subject to quarantine playing. We saw that social distancing was in place, and we advised people accordingly. And these are the kind of things that we're going to get. We're going to get reports. We responded. I spoke to 2 members of the board straight afterwards, and they were positive in regards to our engagement. And indeed, a further letter has been sent out by Mid-Ocean to its members to affirm the expectations. We also attended Tucker's, where golfers were there, and again we engaged with golfers just to make sure that the provisions around social distancing and their health were being complied with. They were, and these are the kind of things that the service is going to be doing over the next few weeks, engaging with people. So we're not trying to challenge people's civil liberties. We're actually saying that they need to comply with the health directions, some of which is legislated, and if they don't, we obviously explain what's happened, but the vast feedback we are getting is that people are complying.
Appreciate that, Commissioner.
Trevor from TNN, you have some queries for the Minister?
Reference to the homeless, the location of Berkeley, how many beds can they assist? Because there's been some serious inquiries about homeless people not having nowhere to go.
In the first instance, we will use the facility on Passenger Road, the Salvation Army facility on Harbour Road, and we believe that we will have between 25 and 30 beds at Berkeley. As you can imagine, we have a gymnasium. We want to make sure that the shower facilities, that the bathroom facilities, and that the housing facilities that we have for people to shelter in place are compliant, that they're healthy, that they're safe, and that they can indeed comply to the social distance requirement. We do know that if we require Sunday night as the first night, with this a teething process, we do know that within the last 24 hours, we have been ripping around trying to get facilities available. If we indeed need more, we will be able to test and adjust our position. And on Monday, I am confident that we will have the requisite opportunity and the requisite accommodations to house our most vulnerable population.
I did speak with a group of homeless guys today, and their queries were as such: you're providing housing and hotel assistance for those that are quarantined. Why not do the same for them?
I can understand where the vulnerable population would like to be housed in hotels, and that is understood. These facilities in the hotels, they are not being used as hotels. These are for people that flew into Bermuda and could not quarantine safely at home. If there is a need for us to use this further, if the hospital, there's a need, we want to have available places. Again, we believe that whenever there is the EMO meets and there is an emergency place being put in, we normally use Cedar Bridge Academy. This is something that is not foreign to the people of Bermuda. Whenever there is an emergency, we put emergency shelters in place for our most vulnerable population. Unfortunately, people do not have the benefit of choosing exactly where they want to go.
Thank you much. How many people in hotels are quarantined? The numbers.
There, right now, if you allow me to look at my legs, there are currently 25 people currently quarantined in hotels.
And how many persons are at a home quarantine? Numbers.
Give me a second, please. 1,465.
On another matter, prison officers somewhat had a very low turnout at work. Are you concerned that the prisons are being, prison officers are being non-compliant in turning into work? That's one. And two, the appointment of the commissioner. She's been assisting she's been on standby for at least 2 years. When will she be promoted to, if possible?
If you'd allow me to do those questions systematically. Firstly, we believe that we shared a plan with the Prison Officers Association and with the body at large. This was the pandemic plan. On the 18th and 19th of March, that plan was given and shared with all of the staff. On the 23rd of March, that same pandemic plan was given to all of the inmates. I had the opportunity to speak with the Prison Officers Association and share with them that their safety and their well-being was paramount to this government. They indicated that they had a challenge and they would like to get thermometers to check members of staff as they came in. That process is ongoing. We have committed to have those thermometers available for prison officers to check temperatures as they come in. To deal with the members of staff that is being alleged that are not coming to work as a result of disquiet centered around the COVID-19 response, I would like to share with you the following details. In HQ, one person is under self-quarantine because they recently returned from the US. At the farm facility, one person is sick and under self-quarantine because they were exhibiting signs of coughing. There were 2 sick and 1 was sick from a long-term illness. At the co-ed facility, there were 2 sick, 1 from a previous condition. At Westgate, there are 9 sick and they were exhibiting flu-like symptoms. 2 are self-quarantined after returning from abroad, and 2 people are abroad on annual leave. I do not accept the position that there is a mass sit-out by members of the correction service. As you can see from those numbers, every one of the absences are justified, and rightly so. If a prison officer is sick generally with the flu, we are exercising the greatest amount of caution and asking that officer to stay away from work until they are cleared to return to work. With reference to your second question, and your second question was why has the acting Commissioner of Corrections not been confirmed in her post as of yet? I have recently spoken to the head of the public service. He has indicated that a decision will be in the public domain before the beginning of June.
My last question is, you're going to have the end of the month coming up. A lot of people are going to have challenges meeting their rents, and for landlords that earn and have mortgages. Have you been in discussion, or is there any avenues available for these people that's going to have these challenges, meeting their commitments?
Those will form the crux of ongoing conversations. Trevor, as you can imagine, this is an operational briefing. The Premier, the Minister of Finance, and other key personnel have formed a COVID team that has a financial response. They are conversing with the banks. They will converse with other entities. When it is the appropriate time, we will bring formally that part of our COVID-19 response, and we will share it with the public.
Any updates on any new developments in reference to President's new cases today?
We will have an update tomorrow at another press conference tomorrow evening.
Right. Thank you, Trevor, from TNN. We now have Dawn Burgess representing Bermuda Broadcasting.
Minister, good evening.
Good evening.
With the people that weren't at home tonight, was it 9 people directly or 9 instances?
There were 9 people that when the community checks were made at their home, they were not in residence at the prescribed time.
And do we have any idea yet as to where they were? Were they off on a drive by themselves? Or?
These matters are still under live investigation.
Okay, thank you very much.
Right. If there are no further questions from members of the media, thank you very, very much for coming. That concludes today's press briefing.
Before we, and I thank to the press officer, Ms. Talbot, for her help in wrapping up the press conference. I think it's safe for us all to say that the curfew is nothing. It is not something that any of us would have planned for. It is an opportunity for us as a community to come together with reference to people that form critical services, and you did not hear your company on the exemption list. We have made an opportunity for you simply to go and fill out an online form. The online form will be vetted by a chief inspector, and he will say yay or nay, and you'll be allowed to follow a prescribed course of action and come into work. If there is an emergency where you need to go to the hospital, you have the opportunity to also call R. Cardwell at bps.bm. The address for the forms online are forms.gov.bm/COVID-19/curfew.